Peine Forte et Dure, strong and hard punishment. Under English common law, a defendant who refused to enter a plea could be pressed, a board across the chest, stones added, one by one, until the accused either spoke or stopped breathing. The Crown did not classify this as torture. It was a legal mechanism, codified, procedural, older than Massachusetts itself. The colony had imported it directly from Tudor criminal courts, where it existed as a tool of compulsion, not punishment. You could end it at any moment. All you had to do was speak. On September 18, 1692, in a field behind the Salem town jail, it was applied for the first and last time in the history of the American colonies. Once, only once, Giles Corey is brought out before sunrise. The September air is cold enough to see breath. He is 81 years old, a landowner, a farmer, a man who has worked this colony for 4 decades. They strip him to the skin in the open field. A wooden board, a door, according to some witness accounts, still carrying its iron hinges, is laid flat across his torso. The weight of it alone is enough to feel. Sheriff George Corwin of Essex County stands over him, commission papers folded in his coat. The ground beneath Corey is damp from overnight rain. The field is quiet except for the sound of boots on wet grass and the low movement of witnesses gathering at the perimeter. Corwin reads the formal demand. He asks Corey to enter a plea. Giles Corey says nothing. The first stones go down at hour 0. Small ones, the size a man could carry in one hand. Peine Forte et Dure was not designed for speed, it was designed to produce speech. Incremental pressure, calibrated to the threshold of endurance. Enough to compress the chest, enough to make each breath slightly shorter than the last. Enough to make the accused understand, in their body rather than their mind, that the alternative was worse. In England, the procedure had produced pleas within hours. No English court on record had ever pressed a defendant to actual death using this method within living memory. The assumption built into the law was simple: no one would hold out. The body would eventually override the will. Giles Corey was going to be the exception. If the reason a man chooses this, over trial, over confession, over life itself, is the kind of buried history you want more of, subscribe now, because what drove Corey to that field is not what any classroom ever told you. By hour 12, the morning has burned off and the field is open under a pale sky. Corwin has replaced the lighter stones with heavier fieldstone, each one carried out and placed with the mechanical patience of a man following authorized procedure. He asks again. The field is silent except for Corey's breathing. Shallow now, audible from several feet away, each exhale fractionally longer than the inhale as his chest fights the weight above it. The witnesses at the perimeter have not moved. Some of them have been standing there since dawn, watching a legal process unfold exactly as the law permits. The only words Corey produces are 2. According to Robert Calef, a Boston merchant who gathered direct testimony from witnesses present at the pressing and published his findings in 1700 in More Wonders of the Invisible World. Corey's exact words were, "more weight." Calef's account is sparse and precise. He noted the time, he noted the words, he recorded what Corey's face looked like when he said them. He said nothing about Corey showing pain. Why would an 81-year-old man ask for more stones? The answer does not begin in 1692. It begins 16 years earlier, in an Essex County courtroom, in a case most historians have quietly set aside. 1676, Giles Corey employed a farmhand named Jacob Goodale. Essex County court records confirm what happened. Corey beat Goodale with a stick. Goodale died from his injuries. An inquest was convened. Corey was charged with manslaughter and cleared. Not acquitted on the merits. Cleared on a procedural technicality involving the inquest process itself. The inquest had not been conducted according to proper form, which meant the evidentiary foundation of the charge collapsed before it reached trial. Corey walked out. He kept his land. He kept his name. He went home and kept farming. And for 16 years, every magistrate in Essex County remembered exactly who he was and exactly how he had walked free. That record is what makes the pressing field legible. The court that put Corey under those stones was not a permanent institution. Governor William Phips had established the Court of Oyer and Tamina in May 1692 by executive commission, bypassing the Massachusetts Bay Colony's standing judicial system entirely, standing up a special tribunal with jurisdiction over life and death, and no appellate structure above it, no established precedent, no rulebook for witchcraft evidence. Phips had created a court specifically designed to move fast and resolve the crisis. That absence of procedural constraint was not a flaw in the design, it was the design. Into that void, Chief Justice William Stoughton introduced spectral evidence, testimony from accusers claiming the spirit of the accused had appeared to them in dreams or visions and caused them physical harm. Stoughton was Harvard-trained, theologically fluent, and legally confident. He drew the standard from a 1627 precedent established by English jurist Richard Bernard, whose guide for grand jurors had argued that the devil could only deploy a witch's spectre with that witch's permission. The logic was self-sealing. A spectre's appearance was proof of a compact was proof of guilt. You cannot cross-examine a dream. You cannot produce a witness to your own spirit's location. Against this standard, innocence had no procedural expression, only the hope that the accusers would stop. By September 1692, 19 people had already hanged at Proctor's Ledge under it. The hangings had taken place in public, on a rocky hillside outside town, in front of crowds who watched and said nothing that changed the outcome. Corey had watched all 19 of them go. He had also, in March 1692, testified against his own wife Martha at her examination, a detail most accounts quietly omit. He told the magistrate she stayed up at night, reading books he didn't understand. He described her behaviour as suspicious. He sat in that examination room and gave the court exactly what it needed to move against her. Weeks later, when the accusation turned and came for him, he entered a not guilty plea at his September 9 examination and submitted to questioning. Then he watched what the trial preparation looked like. The accusers rehearsing their fits before the magistrates, the spectral testimony accumulating faster than any rebuttal could form, the verdicts arriving before the evidence finished. Then he stopped speaking entirely. No explanation, no further plea. Silence. Here is the legal mechanism he had identified. Under Massachusetts property law in 1692, a witchcraft conviction triggered automatic forfeiture of the condemned person's entire estate to the Crown, land, livestock, buildings, tools, every acre and animal accumulated over 4 decades, transferred to the colonial government the moment a guilty verdict was recorded, but forfeiture attached only to conviction. A defendant who died before entering a plea was never tried. A defendant never tried was never convicted. No conviction meant no forfeiture. The estate passed to the heirs intact, by law, without challenge. Corey had found that gap, measured its edges, and built his only remaining strategy around it. He had 2 sons-in-law. He had updated his will in the weeks before the pressing, a document that required a clear legal mind to execute correctly under the circumstances. He understood courts. He had survived one before on a technicality. He knew this one was constructed to convict him. The only variable left was what form his defeat would take and what it would cost his family. He chose the form that preserved everything he had built and cost the court everything it wanted. Sometimes the plainest facts are the hardest to sit with. He had given Martha to these magistrates with his own words in March. Now he was spending his life so that what she left behind would survive her, mind and 24. The field behind the jail is bright with midday sun, the sky flat and pale above the tree line, the air still carrying the faint chill of the previous night. Corwin stands over Corey again. The stones are now heavy enough that Corey cannot fully expand his chest. Each breath is a shallow pull, the sound of it carrying clearly across the field to the witnesses standing at the perimeter. Some of them have been there since dawn. None of them have moved the stones. Corwin asks for a plea, His voice is unhurried. This is, procedurally, still an offer, the same offer it has been since hour zero. Corey's lips move. 2 words. Calef's account records that by the second day, the sustained compression had begun forcing Corey's tongue forward between his teeth. A court officer stepped forward and pushed it back in with the tip of a cane. A small, methodical gesture, performed without ceremony, the kind of act a man performs when he is maintaining a procedure rather than making a choice, Corwin asked. Corey answered. The stones did not move. The court was not reconsidering. Thomas Putnam, whose daughter Anne had been the most prolific accuser in the entire proceedings, naming over 60 people by name across the spring and summer, wrote a letter to Magistrate Samuel Sewell that same afternoon describing what he had observed. That letter survives. It contains no moral hesitation, no acknowledgement that an old man was dying in a field 40 feet away. It reads as a status observation, the pressing noted, the defendant's condition recorded, the proceedings on track. Putnam was not a monster by the standards of his community. He was a man filing a report. That is the specific texture of what happened in Salem in 1692. Ordinary administrative attention applied to an extraordinary atrocity, Counsel 36. The weight on Corey's chest is described by eyewitnesses as equivalent to several large fieldstones stacked together, enough mass that the board beneath them has pressed measurably into the soil. His ribs are almost certainly fractured by this point. The pressure required to prevent full chest expansion at this duration would be sufficient to crack bone, and witnesses describe his breathing as audibly laboured, each intake a visible effort, the intervals between breaths growing longer. The afternoon light has gone long and flat across the field. Corwin's shadow falls across Corey when he asks a third time. His voice carries the same procedural evenness it has carried since dawn. He is not threatening, he is not pleading, he is following a lawful process to its authorised conclusion. Corey does not answer the question. He says the same 2 words he has said since hour 12. Around him, the witnesses stand without moving. The stones do not move. The law does not require them to. Hour 48. Noon. September 19, 1692. The field is bright and windless. The stones have not moved since they were placed. Corwin stands over what remains of Giles Corey and asks one final time. His voice carries the same procedural flatness it has carried for 2 days. Because legally, this is still a request. Still an offer. The accused may speak at any moment and end this. That is what the law says. That is what the law has said since hour zero. Corey's chest has been compressed for 48 hours. His ribs are broken. His breathing has narrowed to something barely perceptible. A faint tremor beneath the stones, less a breath than the memory of one. Robert Calef's account records that at the moment of death, the sustained compression had forced Corey's eyes to bulge from their sockets. Corwin reached down with his walking stick and pressed Corey's tongue back into his mouth one last time. The field went quiet. Giles Corey never entered a plea. The court had the legal authority to do every single thing it did. Peine, Forte, Dure was valid English common law, imported from Tudor criminal procedure, applied exactly as written. The Court at Oyer and Termina held proper jurisdiction under Phipp's executive commission. Sheriff Corwin carried a lawful warrant. Every stone placed on Corey's chest was placed there by a man acting within the complete boundaries of his legal authority. There was no rogue official, no procedural error, no departure from statute, no moment at which anyone present broke the law. The specific horror of what happened in that field is not that the law failed. It is that the law worked, correctly, completely, without deviation, and still could not extract from an 81-year-old man the single word it required. His estate passed to his sons-in-law intact. Every acre he had farmed for 4 decades transferred exactly as he had calculated in the weeks before the pressing. The forfeiture mechanism that had stripped the estates of convicted witches throughout 1692 found no purchase here. No conviction had been entered. No verdict had been reached. The Crown received nothing. the gap in the law that Corey had identified, that silence could constitute a legal schuldfee if maintained long enough, held. The calculation was correct. 3 days later, on September 22nd, 1692, Martha Corey was hanged at Proctor's Ledge alongside 7 others. She was led out in the early morning, the same pale September sky overhead, the same field visible in the middle distance. The woman Giles had called suspicious to the magistrates in March, whose late-night reading he had reported, whose behaviour he had described as strange to men who wrote everything down, died on a rope 72 hours after he died under stone. She maintained her innocence to the end. She prayed on the ladder before they hanged her, loudly enough that the crowd heard every word. No record preserves what passed between her and Giles in the months between his testimony and her execution. No letter, no visit log, no account of a final conversation. Whatever he said to her or didn't say, history has not recovered it. That silence belongs only to them. Martha Corey was the last person executed in the Salem witch trials. Governor William Phipps dissolved the court of Oyer and Termina on October 29, 1692, 40 days after Corey's death. The public pressure had become impossible to manage. Too many prominent families had been accused. Too many people had stood in that field and watched and written letters afterward that read like status reports. A superior court convened in January 1693 and banned spectral evidence on its first sitting. The evidentiary standard that Chief Justice Stolton had endorsed as legally sound was gone within months of the court that had used it. Of the 52 accused still held in custody, every single one was acquitted or had charges dismissed. The legal framework that had hanged 20 people collapsed within weeks of the one defendant it could not break and could not convict. Sheriff George Corwin died of a heart attack in 1696. He was 30 years old. Local creditors, aware that his estate would be contested, reportedly seized his body before burial as leverage against outstanding debts, a final bureaucratic indignity visited upon the man who had administered so many. Salem called it Giles Corey's curse. In 1914, the Essex County Sheriff's Office quietly relocated its headquarters away from the site of the pressing, citing structural concerns with the old building. The new location sat 3 blocks from Proctor's Ledge. Chief Justice William Stottleton was never charged, never censured, never called before any tribunal to account for a single death warrant. He was elected Governor of Massachusetts in 1694 and held that office until his death in 1701. The man who built the court, endorsed the evidence standard, and signed the warrants governed the colony that buried the bodies for 7 years. He never apologized. He never acknowledged error. In his final years, he described the Salem proceedings as a righteous attempt to protect the colony from invisible evil. The record does not show him losing sleep. The Massachusetts government did not issue a formal apology for the trials until 1957. The last of the accused to be exonerated by name was cleared in 2001. Several names remain, technically, unresolved in the historical record, still attached to charges that were never formally vacated, in a legal system that never quite finished the accounting. Giles Corey died in a field behind a jail, under stones placed there by a man following lawful procedure, administered by a court operating within its authorized jurisdiction, in a colony that had imported every relevant legal instrument from a kingdom 3,000 miles away. He had beaten a man to death 16 years earlier and walked free on a technicality. He had testified against his own wife and handed her to the court that would kill her. He was not a saint. He was not a martyr in any clean sense of the word. He was an 81-year-old man who understood, with remarkable precision, the exact mechanism by which the law could be made to fail. And in the end, all he had to do was speak. He didn't. The court dissolved. The judge got promoted. What the men who ran Salem built next. That is the record nobody put in the history books.